I'm ready to start animating my ball jumping from the left side of the screen up and then down to the right side of the screen. I've already figured out the timing. I have a good understanding of how long my animation is going to be. So I'm ready to start physically drawing my character, which in this case is just going to be a simple little sphere. So let's go ahead and start this process. It's pretty straightforward. Much like we did for the timing chart, I want to zero in on those key frames initially. So over here on frame 1, that's going to be one of my key frames. And this is where I need to place my ball. Before we get started here, a couple little housekeeping things. I'm going to create a new material inside of my library. And as one might imagine, I'm going to call this one ball. And I'm going to use a simple stroke. And then I think just for this illustration, I'm going to have the fill color be white. Okay, I'm happy with that. That's going to be the overall look of my ball. Let's draw my ball, and as one might imagine, I'm going to have it be a circle. Oops, I'm also on the wrong animation layer. I got a little excited here. I'm trying to draw on the background animation layer, which I don't want. Let me lock my timing chart and add a new animation layer that is, of course, called ball. Now, some folks like to go in and call this foreground, maybe the name of the character. For me, it's just going to be ball, which I'm pretty happy with. So with my ball animation layer selected, I can see all of my ball keyframes down here in my timeline. Let's go ahead and start physically drawing my ball. So I'm in my little sphere tool. I got my ball material loaded up, and now I can draw what will eventually be my ball. Pretty cool. I'm happy with the overall shape. Yeah, it's kind of generally the proportions that I want it to be. Much like we did earlier, what I want to do and what I want to start with is an understanding of the extreme poses. Of course, I have an extreme pose here on frame 1. I'm looking at my timing chart now, and if I start to arrow through, yep, I have another extreme pose on frame, 6 and 7, or I think it's just 6. Yeah, it's holding that for the other two. And then over here on frame 15, that's the middle spot of my arc. And then lastly, down at the end. Okay, so let's get the extremes in. On frame 15, I've navigated my timeline to frame 15, and I'm going to place the ball where I want it to be, which is right up there. Now that's the extreme pose. Okay, and let's go to the last frame of my animation, which is frame 24. Put the ball where I want it to be, down over here. Now before I go any further, it's important that I look at my onion skinning here to make sure that I can see the entirety of my movements. I can just barely see it here. I'm happy with the onion skinning that I'm seeing there. So I think this is going to work. Let's play the animation. Yeah, and there it is. In its rough, bare bones state, it works. Now let's go in and start adding in those really crucial secondary poses. As I mentioned before in our earlier exploration, I want the ball to squish down and then go up. In addition, as it goes up to the top of the animation, I want it to come back down and strike the ground. And maybe on frame 22, I want it to start elongating out before it squashes the ground, or maybe even a little bit before that. So let's figure out the timing of those really crucial squash frames, which will then allow us to draw the stretch and in-between frames a little bit more directly. Let's do it real fast. So, all right, I'm looking at my timing chart. So right here on frame 7, this is where I want it to squash down, then boing, it's going to squash up. Okay, so how are we going to do the squash frame? Well, I think maybe what we do is that we work with some of our curve editing tools. And I think that's a good place to begin. Let me zoom in here. I already got my keyframe. It's going to auto key any changes that I make here. So let's do this. I'm going to go into my point selection mode, and I'm going to start grabbing some of these points. Move it around here. Something like that. It's going to take a little bit of energy getting this where I want it to go. But that's okay. Small things. I think maybe the problem is that I need to bring these down a little bit. Trying to grab there we go. Oops. I accidentally, there we go. That's what I'm after. And then up here, I'm going to grab these and just make them a little bit bigger. Kind of making a simple little lima bean shape. Now let's see if that works. Yeah. Now my eye is looking at the contact point. Yeah, there we go. That's starting to look pretty solid. I like it. I may have gotten a little bit too big, but that's okay. it really squashed itself down pretty significantly. Oops, excuse me. Let's look at our onion skinning. Yeah, I think I might go back in and make it a little bit smaller on the sides. One of the things that we always want to try to do as much as we can is maintain the proportions of our object. Got a little bit too loose in the proportions. I like that it squishes down. I'm also going to squish it this way a little bit more. If you look at the onion skinning, yeah, that's a reasonable amount of deformation, as they say, on that squash pose. Okay, now I'm pretty happy with that. So that's how it's going to squash. And maybe I want it to squash down a little bit. Yeah, maybe I want it to be... Let's do frame 10 real fast. Because I'm trying to figure out... There's 7. That's an extreme pose. On frame 10, this is when it's moving up, because it's got to get to the top of the peak by 15. On frame 10, what's the ball going to look like? Well, let's move all of the points together now. And I think what I'm going to do on this frame is just go in, make it, I'm going to dissolve one. That's what I'm going to do, because I want to make it more into an oval. I may have gone a little too far with my oval shape, but that's okay. Now this oval shape, I really want to make sure... sorry, I keep missing the little handle. I'm going too fast. There we go. Now, the center point for this oval, I want to have it be on the line. And this kind of speaks to why we have these guidelines here, is that we have a really good motion path built into the project file itself that we can use to help establish the path of motion here. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I like that. As I scrub through the timeline, you can see that it squashes. I may need to go a little bit more extreme on that, but then it goes up, and it goes to the top, and then it comes back down. Now, I'm not going to do every single animation frame here, but I want to show you the process that I go through. Here, we'll do the top ones. The top ones are really, really easy. Here's the peak animation right there. Now, what's cool about this is that we can maybe on, here's what we're going to do. We're going to copy this shape from frame 15, and we're going to paste it on frames 14 and 13. No sense in redrawing it. We have just Command-C. We already have this stuff here. Let's go back to frame 14, paste it in. Come on, fingers. Why did that not work? Because I didn't have the frame selected. That's why. Let's turn off our curve editing. And let's go grease pencil, copy. Let's go back one frame to frame 14. And we're going to go grease pencil, paste. There it is. And we have the animation frame. Let's move it where we want it to move now. Again, keeping a close eye on this entire process. I know that that shape is still in my clipboard, so I pasted it once more. Yeah, see how fast that goes? Not too bad. It's cool, work intelligently. You guys are smart people. That copy and paste stuff, if this form doesn't change too much, just use copy and paste. You're not cheating. A lot of folks are like, oh my gosh, it's cheating. I'm using copy and paste. No, this isn't an English class. This is an animation class. We are allowed to copy and paste. It's part of our workflow. You'd be silly not to do it. Animation is already hard enough. Let's not make it any more difficult. There we go. I'm liking this. This is looking great. Let me go back into my stroke selection engine, and I'm just going to make some small tweaks here to the curvature. I'm looking at the motion path and also the onion skinning. Yeah, there we go. I like this. This is starting to look pretty solid. Yeah. Now, I'm not done with the ending. I still got a lot of work left to do. And, of course, the squash frames at the beginning are still need some love, but this is starting to really work out pretty well. Notice how I'm doing this. I'm going through, and I'm not trying to draw every single frame in sequence. That's called the straight-ahead method, where I draw frame 1, then draw frame 2. I'm using the pose-to-pose method. I've established the key poses, and then I'm going in and looking for secondary key poses. And in my case, those squash frames, that one, that's a secondary key pose. And I'm trying to plot out those first and early on. Because in every sense, the key frames are going to lead our decision-making process. They're going to tell me how many squash frames or what the squash frames need to look like before I really commit to it. So I'm pretty pleased with the way that this is looking. I got a little bit more work in front of me. I know this is often a lot like watching paint dry, watching someone animate. So I want to stop it here. But this is the process, the animation workflow. We're not trying to draw every single frame in sequence. We draw the poses, we find the extremes, and then we find those secondary extremes that will help lead our decision-making process. From there, we then can draw all of the in-betweens to match the timing chart and to establish that overall duration and feeling that we prototyped with the timing chart.